You're listening to Hajduk Talks, the official podcast of the AYF West. My name is Haig Minasyan, and we're just a couple of Armenians talking in the world.
A couple of Armenians talking in the world.
Edgar Elbakyan, thank you for coming. You are a political scientist, a social thinker from Hayastan. You're also the co-founder of the Armenian Project, which is a nonprofit organization. And when I was looking over your publications and all the work that you've done, I mean, there's when we say like an expert on the region and Armenia and our history and the current geopolitics, I mean, I can't imagine a better resume than yours. You've almost touched on every aspect of like Armenian history and politics in the last 100 years. It's so relevant to Artsakh now. And so we're so lucky to have you here and to talk with us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. But with the state of affairs, it's not looking good in Hayastan. And however, like the way I was raised, Edgar, in Dunis Mecha, I was raised with the mindset that we could lose Armenia at any minute. And I've always lived with that mindset. And maybe it's what made me so crazy and whatever, why I'm here now. But I was always kind of with, I'm in uncomfort. Every time we spoke English, my mom would say, the Turks will win if you speak English, kind of thing. You know, every little thing that I did mattered. And so it was, I don't want to say it's no surprise as to our difficult situation now, but I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the current situation in Armenia? Is it at like the brink of existential crisis? And do you think other people also, what do they think in Hayastan in general?
You used the very appropriate phrase to describe the situation. That's the brink of existential threat.
Yes.
Or if I go a little bit tougher, then at the brink of non-existence.
Yeah, annihilation, whatever.
Of course, the overarching problem and maybe the most visible part of this problem are the territorial concessions and territorial losses Armenia is undergoing now under this pro-Turkish Pashinyan regime. Mm-hmm. But that's as I mentioned, the most visible part of the iceberg. We also have not too much visible and not too much exposed parts. I'll call them the dismantling of the Armenian identity. Every time when you call Armenia and Armenian, your mind is naturally coming up with certain patterns, certain ideas. That's Armenia. That's adhering, for example, to the agenda of having justice for the Armenian genocide, or Pahanja Dirution. Armenia that's struggling for Artsakh, for our ancestral lands, etc. Now, what we see in Armenia, it's an organized process of dismantling this identity and turning it into something unfortunately, we had some 100 years ago during the Ottoman Empire times of being Raya. That's
what does that mean?
A people without any rights. It's an Islamic Ottoman term, to denote non-Islamic peoples, including Armenians.
That don't have rights, right? Yeah. And I mean, and so this, it's harder to identify or see this thing, right? But it's happening. I mean, one, would you say most Armenians are aware of or feel the threat of let's say the physical, tangible territorial rights? Like, is it easy for everyone to notice out there? And two, like, how aware are they of the second thing, of the non-tangible?
It's a tricky question because this question has two answers. The first one is a very short answer. Mm-hmm. We may say that everybody is understanding and everybody is aware of the process going on. Mm-hmm. But there is also the second part or the second version of this answer that some people who realize that everybody is actually realizing, but some of them are ready to struggle against it. understanding that it is a kind of struggle between David and Goliath, biblical characters. And some people understanding this proportional power ratio are trying to make themselves safe from this struggle and not to sign up.
Right. It's scary. And it's like, so if David and Goliath, there's the portion that don't want to fight Goliath, and they're like, maybe we'll get mercy from Goliath if we're just nice to him, versus the others that are like, no, he's going to kick our ass either way. We got to do something about it, right? I mean, so there, and you mentioned Ottoman Empire 100 years ago. I always think about Mkhitar Sparabed, David Bek's right-hand man, and how the Khunzoreski's like betrayed him, right? Because they wanted to get mercy. So it feels like this is not and also Vasak Suni from like Vartan Mamigoyan. So this isn't anything new for us, right? Like there's always been this element in our people. Is it innately an Armenian thing, or is it just being a smaller nation surrounded by bigger nations, and it's just a natural phenomenon of that?
Definitely the second answer.
Yeah.
Because betrayal, we may treat to this phenomenon as something deep psychological, and we may try to understand the underlying psychological causes.
It's a human
of
thing,
betrayal.
right?
But what really matters is not the human and psychological part, but the socio-political. Because in socio-political contexts, betrayal always takes place, and it changes the game in the town when you have this perceived weakness.
Right. It's an aura of like of weakness that has a real impact, right? I was just talking to Sean Charchaf about this. Is like we're being given this like narrative of we're losers, we're weak, and I was telling him like big countries or these neighbors aren't going to want to be allies with or work with, someone who's so self-deprecating and doesn't think they're, strong. I mean, is there some truth to the fact that like of being a pessimistic and negative-minded, they are bigger countries? What's even the point? Like, is there any truth to their perspective?
It's the starting point. Having this feeling of self-confidence, having this feeling of kind of God-given mission, that you have some God-given mission you must fulfill, purpose that you must fulfill on this earth. It's the starting point. It's where every small nation has taken its roots from. So if we just try to skip this equation,
the step.
And yes, look into technical issues only, then it's very hard to understand how Israel is continuing its existence, how Taiwan is continuing to be de facto independent from China, and all other small nations. But what drives them through this turbulent geopolitical and regional stuff is their willingness. Yes, their willingness and their readiness to stand for their cause.
If you're not willing to fight for, or like if you don't believe you have a right to have your country because you don't perceive yourself as willing, as like being having that right, then that's how they defeat you. Like that's how. Without even firing a bullet, you're almost taking yourself out of the game because you don't believe you even have a right to be in the game in the first place. So it is a self-perception thing.
Yes, it's called learned helplessness. It's a very, very well-known phenomena for interdisciplinary scholars.
What's an example of like that? Like another example people would know maybe.
Research was conducted with mice.
Oh, mice.
Mice, yes. And they turn them into water. Jurimeç nedazen.
Okay, throw them in the water.
Yes. Yeah. And they observed that the first mouse that was being taken away from water and then again delved into it, he's starting to struggle because he already has this experience that there is a chance to survive.
I see.
He has been out of water for some seconds.
So he knows there's like
the second one, That's not being Jurimeç and Chenhanish.
Yeah.
It struggles for some 4 or 5 seconds and then gives up.
Because it doesn't know that
there is no chance. If there is no chance, why to struggle? But the first mouse that for some small interval is being taken away from
knows
water,
there's hope.
It fights very, very long after the second time it's delved into it.
That's interesting. So then where are we then? We know we had the First Republic.
The First Karabakh War was our this being taken out of water experience.
We know it's possible.
It was very hard to believe. When Artur Mkirchan, one of the first leaders of independent Karabakh, before becoming the leader in 1988, when the very Karabakh movement started, he used to repeat every time in every Engerain gathering that we need to liberate lands adjacent to Arax Valley.
Yeah.
Namely Fizuli, Jabrail. And everybody was looking at him like, hey, this dude is crazy.
Yeah.
What is he talking about? It was made possible after 5 years.
Yeah.
Armenia was under blockade during the First Karabakh War. Energy blockade and railroad, Armenian, literally every kind of blockade.
Artsakh was also like surrounded as well too.
Artsakh was under blockade, the enemy blockade. We had this devastating consequences of Gyumri Vanadzor Spidag
earthquake. Yes.
All Armenian economy and economic system was
gone,
dismantled. It was gone. It was not about recession, depression. It was about being non-existent,
nothing,
ceasing to exist.
No water, no electricity. I mean, it was
no supply. I don't know, import, export chain. Everything was ruined. But in such conditions, the country won.
Right.
Because it believed that he's struggling for a right cause. Or Qarabağ Armenia. Yeah, that's why. So it's our experience of demonstrating that there is no helplessness.
Do you think we have short-term memory loss then? Like, are we really mice in that way? That because we should know that there is outside the water, that breath, that hope that exists. Like, it wasn't even that long ago, but. Why are they forgetting now, or why are they so willing to kind of lose that kind of energy or hope?
The real carriers of memory are institutions.
Yeah,
and depending how strong these institutions are or how weak they are, you may have the consequences on the board. Yeah, on the reality.
I see.
So now this. Learned helplessness is being taught by the authorities to the people. All the discourses, all the propaganda and misinformation campaigns, the theses they are using are directed to this purpose. For example, no matter who the leaders of Armenia were or would be, the result will be the same. I see it's a bright example of learned helplessness. So if there is no difference who runs the country, no difference, then why do we need to struggle to change the regime?
I mean, so is that something you think is needs to happen? Is a new government with the right attitude, let's say? Is that what's essential right now?
In Armenia, we call it national government.
Right.
Azgain Garavarichan. The very first duty of new Azgain Garavarichan, I think, will be changing the whole logic about how Armenia was established and being upheld. Why do we need Armenia as a nation state? Because in 1990s, regardless of the victorious war in Karabakh, the foundations, meaning, the foundations about purpose of Armenia were laid down by Levan Petrosyan in a very materialistic way, that we need this country like just as a social, as a welfare state.
Right.
So yes, people must work here, pay taxes. Through these taxes, you should uphold the school system, pensions, etc. But there is no meaning to create a welfare state. I don't know.
For the sake of a welfare state, right?
Yes, because such kind of states, they exist, and you cannot reach, for example, the United States of America in this term.
Yeah.
There is no uniqueness. If there is no uniqueness, there is no meaning to fight for and even to die for this not unique.
Or maybe that's why people were so willing to leave in the 90s. I mean, granted, it was rough there. I get that. But like, if this is just another state, then why not just go to another better state, right? What's unique about Armenia and why I should stay here wasn't communicated, you're saying.
And Armenia, yes, Armenia really can have one uniqueness. In reality, it has one uniqueness. That's being the state, the home of all Armenians worldwide. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's not something, I don't know, racist or something like narrow-minded, because right after the Great French Revolution, the very concept of nation states has been formulated through this purpose.
Yeah.
Like the national homes for every ethnicity.
Especially for minorities too, like especially for the smaller nations. Like it was our form of liberation after being just, colonized for so long. It's like even more justified for our case, whereas like we are down to the 10% of our homeland, and like we've tried to live under other nations and it hasn't worked. We especially need an independent place.
That's it.
And I was telling an interesting story the other. I was just telling again, Shant, in the episode how there is in DC there's the Armenian house, right, where a lot of Armenian students and young professionals live at for free for a few months, and they all live together. And I was there visiting, and one of the girls there was telling me a story about there's like 2 girls in this house and 10 guys. She was telling her coworker this story about where she lives, and the other coworker was like, "Are you ever worried about like the guys in the house? Do you lock your room at night? Do you are you worried about them stealing things?" And she told him, like, "I've not once thought about like that being an issue at all." And it made me think, and we talked about it as a group in the house. I was like, how special is that you have a space in America where you trust everyone around you, even though you didn't know each other beforehand, right? It's such a special thing that is very rare in the world. And I told him, this is what we're fighting for, is a place on this earth where we can trust and feel comfortable, right? And so and it's just to support the point that you're making as to why it's so important. But I mean, have you, the work that you do in Hayastan, I mean, are you finding any success in communicating this? Are they hesitant to, let's say, listen to you or believe that, there's pro-Turk elements and this learned helplessness is a real thing? Like, do they believe you with those things?
People actually care.
Yeah.
We have seen all these demonstrations, rallies, uprisings starting from 2020 up till now, up till today, literally. Yeah. Of course, we have this abstinential part of society. They may be not directly Nigolagan, but still
they're neutral, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, but there is no neutrality, because if in a state of war between good and evil you are abstinating, then you are
part of evil.
Yes, you are part of status quo.
Right.
And the status quo is an evil status quo.
No good.
Yes, unfortunately. There are some underlying psychological causes why people still, some part of them are adhering to status quo.
In denial, maybe, too.
In denial of their participation in the so-called Velvet Revolution and the direct consequences it had. But my strong belief is that really everybody in Armenia understands everything very well. We have now, unfortunately, we have already in Armenia people saying that Turks are not enemies.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting at.
It's a fairy tale. The real enemies are Russians, for example, or Tashnaks.
Yeah.
Or we ourselves, Armenians, as enemies of Armenians, this kind of silly stuff. But I always reply to this so-called argument in a very, very sound and easy way. I say, hey, dude, if you are confronted with a situation, confronted with the dilemma, for example, you need to pick up a nurse for your baby, and either she is Russian or Turkish.
Right.
Who will you pick up for your kid?
Right.
Nobody will pick up a Turkish nurse.
Well, that
for his or her Armenian kid. So everybody understands everything very well. So this is not just about
convincing them,
raising awareness and convincing. Maybe this is more about empowering, because if we believe, and I do believe, you do believe, that the problem is learned helplessness. So we need to empower people that you are not helpless. Through each other, together with each other, we will be strong. Because this internal mindset, the problem thereof, has an amplifying bad consequences. Because of this, you are unable to liberate yourself, from this neo-Ottoman agenda. Because of this, you every time, even from potential allies, from potential friends, you hear this point that what can be done, your people is okay with this kind of stuff. You took it very easily, surrendering Artsakh to Azerbaijan, etc. So it's the starting point, because if you don't have a people ready to fight for its cause, then we can speak about, I don't know, about processes around Israel and Palestine, about north-south corridor or west-east corridors, but it's
none of it matters.
It's funny that, yes, it really doesn't matter if this morale in Armenia degraded. I
mean, this neo-Ottoman agenda, let's say on a more like strategic geopolitical kind of mindset of the pan-Turkist, neo-Ottoman, Kemalist. Could you explain that a little bit more as to like what Turkey and Azerbaijan and like their goal is right now, or or a little bit about these terms that you mentioned?
Although we use this denotation neo, but in regard of Armenia, there isn't anything new in the Turkish or post-Ottoman Turkish agenda. Turkey is very, if I may use this word, very sincere in its
expansionist,
in its goals, in the manifestations thereof. They clearly admit that they have committed towards Armenians and Armenia such a crime that will never be really forgiven.
Right.
So there is only one way, there is only one chance to close this page, to close this story once and forever. That's the
get us out of the way.
Yes, total annihilation of Armenia, Armenians, and the Armenian question. Because even under such a pro-Turkish regime, Armenia still exists. There is a predominant Armenian majority, ethnic majority in Armenia up till now. You still have state institutions, no matter how much weakened, and still you have, due to geography, due to historical and geographical reasons, you have at least two countries that may be potential allies for a future un-Turkish-sized Armenia, Iran and Russia. So it's a threat for Turkey. even having this pro-Turkish regime. So their stance, their goals are very transparent.
Right.
There is no Armenia, there is no Armenian issue, as it was put on the table some 100 and more years ago.
Is there, not that there's a comfort in their their very transparent kind of agenda, but is it hard for people to believe when it's so out and about? Or I guess it might just go along the lines of their
they do not want to believe.
Who, like the international community, or like Armenians, they don't want to believe?
Some part of Armenians.
Yeah.
It's hard because Armenians, Hayastansis, they were raised, not necessarily raised as kids, because I'm speaking about general populace, for example, people of my dad's age, for example. They were raised in Soviet times, but they were socialized in independent Armenia.
Right.
So they were socialized in a way that here is 21st century. The 21st century is about the cessation of conflicts. There are no more conflicts, no more killings, genocides. It's all about social welfare. It's about comfort. It's about consumer society. Which supermarket do you prefer, either this or that? And through media channels, people have constantly consumed this type of information. Not only about Armenia itself, but about the whole world.
Right.
Look so many cozy places where you can have a very stylish lifestyle in a comfort, free of any conflict, and you find yourself in a situation when there are two neighbors of Armenia that try to literally annihilate to the last man, you and your country. So, and from the other side, your government, de facto government, is trying to convince you, in this learned helplessness. So it's very hard for people to fully realize, and because after realization, you need to act.
Right.
So how to act if you are helplessness? It's a vicious circle.
Well, so Armenia's government is perpetuating this kind of mentality, but what is the actual distinct actions by the Turkish government or their policies or Azerbaijan's? What are they saying that then Nikol or the Armenian government is exactly doing? Do we have kind of an example of this kind of policy in Armenia?
Handing over Armenian lands. This is the most visible part. Then questioning the Armenian genocide.
Right, I saw. Yeah.
Yes. This stupid thing that let's have a list of all 500,000 victims. It's part of Turkish agenda. It has always been a part of Turkish agenda.
To put doubt on the genocide.
Yes. To tell, okay, you say that there was a genocide and 500,000 people died. Are there any names? And nobody can today.
It's impossible. The Holocaust, you can't even do it. And that was the most organized genocide.
Yes, I was trying to bring this point about Holocaust. Nobody can even mention this because that will be perceived by progressive media, by Western thinkers as putting it under question, questioning the Holocaust. Why do you need these names? Why? Because you don't believe? So it's already a crime.
They can't even if they tried, they can't even collect every name because there wasn't even a record. Because especially the Armenian case, there wasn't even a record of every Armenian name in the first place.
But besides, there were hundreds, thousands of villages that were annihilated to the last man. Or maybe there is just one kid surviving from that village. For example, he was 5 years old and kidnapped by a Kurdish family and ransomed by Armenian fedais.
Right.
And he's supposed to remember the names of other
His 20
200
family-
co-villagers. That's silly.
No, so this is an example of. I mean, when I first heard that, I mean, I thought many things. I thought exactly this, but let's say I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm Narcis Kopalyan, and I'm like trying to argue, like the strategy as to what Nicole's doing. He's giving them some. Nicole's giving Turks some stuff like that they'll like to go easier on us. You know, let's give them this thing that's not real money or real land to put down on the genocide as like some sort of like bargaining chip. I mean, is there any like what's the gain from Nicole's perspective to like even put down on the genocide? Is it his political kind of like strategies, diplomatic, or is it just him just they're telling him what to do and he's doing it, you know?
Yes, they tell him what to do, and he does. However, we need to understand that long before coming and rising to power, Nicole was writing about these kind of things, and it's his way of thinking, his actual and genuine way of thinking. It's not just about that Artsakh has been captured under the threat of force and under force, and now they are just dictating him what to do because he's Kherch, he's the leader of a loser country, so what can he do? No. He was writing about giving, for example, a corridor to Turkey and Azerbaijan through Sunik in 2001.
So he was already thinking this way already. And I mean, so then do you think...
It's victim blaming thinking. It's a way of victim blaming. It's a tactic how... Pernagal powers are trying to justify their crimes, genocides, mostly perpetrated by them. So it's you that we need to blame. You are those who should be blamed for what took place. It's a very well-known rhetoric, a very well-known narrative of Turkish propaganda that you were our subjects,
right,
slaves, if you want.
Yeah.
And you tried to make some uprising. Yeah, you resorted to, I don't know, foreign power. Again, it's a lie from historical perspective. Factually, it's a lie, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
You tried to liberate yourselves, and we had to exterminate you. So it's you that need to be blamed.
Yeah. It's our fault for wanting to live with dignity and everything. No, it's I know their arguments well, but now I'm thinking like just Nikol was a perfect kind of like person to prop up in Armenia in terms of his perspective on things. I mean, is it too conspiratorial to say like, oh, the West or Turkey was already aware of this early on and was like happy to support this guy's ascension?
It was picked up.
Yeah, I mean, because
picked up based on what he thought and what he wrote.
And like he was, I mean, Levon Der-Petrosyan, would you say that he's a continuation of his like a kind of philosophy, or is there some differences?
Sure.
Yeah,
no, he's a very vulgar continuation of that.
Literally vulgar. How closely are they related now? Are they still in touch and work together, or is that relationship kind of deteriorated? Because I thought I saw like him disagreeing with
yes,
each other.
tactically they are against each other. Levon is trying to self-distance himself and his party, National Congress or something like that, from Nikol. That it's not what I was telling you before, and it's not the same what Nikol is doing. He's doing it in a wrong manner, wrong way. And yes, there are some tactical divergences, but in a very sharp situations when there is a strong need for leadership, strong need for action, decision making. We have seen it many times that Levon is continuing to support Nikol. For example, in 2022, 2 years ago, during Jermuk-Varteni's war, Levon invited his two counterparts, former presidents Sirsak and Robert Kocan, asking them to consolidate around Nikol, helping him to sign the second capitulation.
I remember, yeah.
So
they defeated us from within, kind of in this sense, right? What are you? So the Armenia Project, Armenia University, the projects that you're working on, is that sort of what you guys are kind of your missions are, is to create those spaces where we can learn to or unlearn that helplessness, learn helplessness?
Yes, that's right. We established Armenian Project, nonprofit organization, right after the 2020 war. It was 11th of November. We understood that what took place was not just a military issue,
right?
Yes, and that it's an elite issue. And by saying elite issue, we didn't necessarily mean only persons.
Yeah.
It was a defeat of the way of thinking Armenian elites had adopted starting from 1991 or even 1988. So we came up with this idea that in order to have a new way of thinking, in order to cultivate the value-based perception of Armenian state, Armenian nation state, we need to act, we need to transfer our knowledge, our skills, our connections to younger generation. And most effective way of doing that, of course, it was an education.
Yeah.
So what we are busy with actually is empowering youth with knowledge, skills, connections, and trying to cultivate a future Armenian leadership in a broader sense of that notion. Be it a social leader, business leader, clergyman, so church leader, or political leader. So it's about it's not a narrow set goal, but rather it's something broader to cultivate a new way of thinking, and those who are filled with this idea, with this way of thinking.
Well, let me tell you, that's kind of how I see the AYF in the diaspora, Edgar, is they used to tell us all the time, like, you're being brainwashed by AYF when you're a young kid going to Badanegan, etc. But as I got older, I realized, or I think about my friends that are more apathetic towards Armenia or don't have that same political fire within them. I'm like, well, they just ended up getting brainwashed by the American education system that teaches them not to care about all these things and to value the consumerist lifestyle, right? And so that's how I saw the value of like these organizations that I've been involved in, is to try to develop us in an Armenocentric way of thinking and living that I value so much, and I'm grateful to the AYF. And it seems like that's kind of what your goal is, but I don't know, like it almost seems like the West is too influential.
It's labeling. Whenever they use this kind of our adversaries or opponents use this kind of very hard sounding words. For example, brainwash,
nationalistic, or you're nationalist, right? They
revengist.
Revengist.
For example, revengist. If somebody wants as a social political being, Edgar Elbakyan, I want that Artsakhtsis live in Artsakh. Not I want them to be ousted from Armenia or deported, but naturally they should live in their ancestral lands. So it's their right as people, as refugees nowadays. So that's my political goal. This is being framed as revengeism.
Revanchist. You want to kill the Azeris or the Kurds or what? That's what they say about us about Western Armenia, right? We believe there's a right to Armenians living in Western Armenia, but what are you going to do?
The same about Badanegan, the same about our Armenian Project and Armenian University. We're transmitting national values, national value-based education, and very cutting edge and up-to-date knowledge to our students. They call it as indoctrination.
Yeah.
What they do is not indoctrination.
Right.
It's about raising awareness. Come on.
No, it's exactly that. Well, it's when I say, I'm a Dashnak Tagan, I'm a nationalist. Vordev Ankleren, because I have to use the English word
Yes.
for it. Every American or Westerner associates it with what they know, you know. And I keep telling them, stop letting Europeans ruin every word out there, and to like stop, and especially to Armenians, I'm like, don't think about when we say tsehagron or when we say like nationalism, don't use the Western way of thinking about it. Think about it from like an original Armenian perspective, and so it's just but that's what they'll do is they'll use these like correlating things with what people connect with, and they discredit us, and it's like it's a tactic that works, you know, but until they wake up, I guess, and see that you're being indoctrinated either way, right? Minshite, the way you're getting indoctrinated values a Mercedes-Benz and a big TV and then what next show's coming out instead of your homeland, you know? So Edgar, how can we support you and what's next for Armenia Project and the work that you're doing? What's the outlook looking like right now?
Now we are boasting with a community of approximately 300 people of graduates and currently enrolled students.
Excellent.
Our upcoming milestone is our summer camp that for the second time will be organized in Islamic Republic of Iran.
Summer camp?
Summer camp of Armenian University.
You know, we love summer camps as Stashniks.
I know.
Let us know. We'll be counselors. We'll come. I would love to.
I know. Armenian University organizes summer and winter camps once in a year, from each of them. We are being supported by fellow Armenians from Armenia, of course, to the United States, Russian Federation, Sweden, France, Iran. Yes, we are being sponsored by ethnic Armenian capital,
right?
So
which is important.
Yes, the countries I denoted, it was not about the governments thereof. It was about Armenians residing in these countries and having their own capital that they are willing to direct for this purpose. During fall, maybe late October or early November, the date is not yet fixed. We'll have a gala fundraiser event here in Los Angeles.
Perfect.
Organized by Armenian Eagles nonprofit foundation. Yes, it's
great.
501c3.
Yes,
C3 foundation.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be there to support.
Yes, they are our partners and helping for some already 2-3 years.
Excellent.
With raising funds and upholding our activities in Armenia.
So to summarize, we need a new set of values in Armenia which have been corrupted by the West, let's say.
Definitely.
We need a more confident and self-believing, self-confident kind of perspective that is being influenced by Turks and those elements. And third is to...
There are third, fourth, fifth things, but you already mentioned the base.
Those first two things need to be done first so that then we can accomplish
If you
the
want
rest.
to have Armenia, then you should want to have Armenia.
Need people that
Then
want
you
Armenia.
need to have Armenians, etc. So today it was an introductory episode. We had the opportunity only to speak about these basics, fundamentals, but that was right.
And I like what you said about instead of convincing them, what you really need to do is empower through like personal relationships. Like that was great. So
and your own example.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Edgar, thank you again for stopping by. I know you're busy, and keep up the great work. And we look forward to supporting Armenia Project, whatever events you guys have, and any other ways we can follow you. So, where could we follow your guys' work?
You can follow us on Instagram. I think it's the most preferable platform. And then on Facebook, on our website, armenianproject.com and armenianuniversity.com.
All right. Well, thank you again, Edgar, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Engage.
You're listening to Hajduk Talks, the official podcast of the AYF West. My name is Haig Minasyan, and we're just a couple of Armenians talking in the world.
A couple of Armenians talking in the world.